passion, purpose, and parenting collide. So tune in as we dive in, with our amazing guests, where they share their journey of building a business and a family, but with intention. Welcome, my friends.
Thank
Hey,
you.
glad to
Thanks
have,
for having us.
glad to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate you both, and this is the first time that we do have a couple as a guest. So thank you so much for doing this with us.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe introduce yourself, guys.
You go first.
Sure. I'm Dustin Vance, self-employed, um, married with two beautiful children, 2.5-year-old son and a 4.5-year-old daughter.
Amazing. Welcome.
And he runs our Google Ad division of the company.
Okay.
And I'm Annalise Vance, wife, mom, also of two. And I am a project manager, fractional CMO, marketing vendor broker. So I will say I'm the matchmaker of marketing vendors. So when you need that Instagram live person, just let me know.
Oh, please. Yes, absolutely. Yes, and we should definitely be doing. Yeah, I look forward to that. And also, wow, I like it. Actually, the way you guys have planned, it works out perfectly because a lot of times the our wives that are doing better in organizing, like making sure everybody's okay, from eating, from like you guys run everything. I love it. So I think you guys have a perfect, you know the candidacy there is just amazing. I appreciate you guys sharing this. So how did you come up with this? Maybe first introduce us about your business. What is it about? And how long has it been like working and stuff like that, please.
Yeah, so I have been around digital marketing, advertising, sales, and operations, and all of that since 2007.
Okay.
I was in corporate sales and I did that for almost 14 years
Okay.
until they decided they didn't like that I was in the 21st century using networking to grow my business.
Okay.
And then this one over here said, why don't you start that consulting company you've always talked about? So I
Nice.
did. And I remind him when things get tough, it is his fault because it was his idea. And yeah, so I started just consulting, just, whatever people were going to pay us for. Because at the time we had a mortgage, we had an 8-month-old. 4 months later, we conceived our son. So by the end of that year, we had two under two. And Google Ads has always been something that I've really believed in, always been
Okay.
passionate about. I really think it's one of the best places to get a return on investment, and that is not to put down anything else. It's just the one that made the most sense to me.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough to be married to a brilliant man who is self-taught in
Okay.
running it. He'd been around it since 2007, obviously being married to me, but still surprises me with what he can figure out and who we can help because he's able to be very creative. What do you
Amazing.
always say, sweetie?
I make your promises come
You
true.
make my promises come true. That's
There
right.
you go.
And then, as a good husband should. And let's see. So yeah, we honed down to Google Ads, and October 22, we honed down to focusing on dad-owned businesses. So
Okay.
we do done-for-you Google Ads for dad-owned businesses. That is
Okay.
our main offering that we have. But I'm
Amazing.
also by trade a fractional CMO, project manager. I do data analysis.
Okay.
Um, and the marketing vendor broker bit came because everyone kept coming to me saying, Annalise, do you know? And I kept saying yes. And I said, well, I may as well get paid to do this. So
Right. Right.
now we have not just marketing vendors, but we also have parenting vendors.
Okay.
We have a financial planner. We have a life insurance person. We
Right.
have a payroll person. So anything about business or parenting for family owned businesses, we have and are able to offer people. And I always say when people ask if I know them, either yes or I will find them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can find pretty much anyone on LinkedIn.
Right.
I just met a dating coach on Monday. So, if
Amazing.
single dads want to get back in the game, then I
Right.
got that too. So,
Amazing.
um,
Amazing.
Just depends on what people need.
Oh, great, great. Thank you so much. I think this is you're needed in this current day and age. So this is a very lucrative and also very useful niche to have. So we truly appreciate you what you're doing. So let's dive in a little bit into the parenting. So how do you get to do the the parenting along with the other responsibilities? Because now that you're parents and also your business, all those things going on at once.
Start.
Is there more of a specific question to parenting? Because parenting is kind of a generalized that can kind of go any direction.
Absolutely. For instance, like you got things going on. We have things at home, whether you have to send kids to school or the kids are sick. You have to like make sure that you're taking care of them, or let's say it's time to pick them up, and then we have things going on at that time. Maybe there's appointments that they're supposed to be met from the business standpoint. So how do you get to manage that at the same time?
Really, it's just priorities.
All right.
When we started this, we started with an end goal that we were looking to achieve.
Hmm.
I think oftentimes people start a business to fulfill an immediate problem.
Right.
They don't think far enough out in the sense of what's the grand plan that they want it to do.
Okay.
For us, it was we were looking for ways for her to be a stay-home mom,
Okay.
and then the reality of it was once she became a stay-home mom and she was able to be a little bit more full-time,
Right.
the thought was like, why can't I be around more?
Right.
And the thought process was, why does the man always have to be the one that goes out and leads the family and all that stuff? Why can't both parents be home?
Right.
And you cut out 50% of the parenting when you know the man's not in the picture as much either. If the kids
Hmm.
only ever see that the husband's always gone out there providing a living,
Hmm.
but he's not at home providing other things that are essential,
Hmm.
you know, providing a living is one part of the equation. Um, and so we hit a certain point where I was able to step away, and it's kind of been a reality. And so, to kind of answer your question on the parenting side of things, is we stepped back and we said, what do we want more?
Hmm.
And we set out to solve that problem, um, not the immediate problem.
Okay.
Some people start out with the immediate problem of finances,
Right.
of like maybe pay a bill, but for us, it was more of a we were looking for a specific lifestyle that we were wanting to produce.
I'll keep talking.
Amazing.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
Amazing. Yes. No. No. I'm trying to see you. Because I'm trying to organize everything at the same time. So I think once we finish this
Great.
section of parenting, I will definitely be seeing what the folks are talking about in the chat, so we can address those as
Okay.
well. Amazing.
Okay.
I would say the
Amazing.
last thing I would add is on the
Yes.
parenting side of things, we had to settle, you know, and even though it's kind of a cliche, societal accepted statement, but it's actually a very inaccurate statement, um, is we're setting out to raise adults. We're not raising children.
They
Right.
know how to be
Um,
children.
correct. They don't need our help on how to be children, but they need us to prepare them for what's coming up in the world.
Right.
And so um, it just in that statement, it really kind of sets the heading. If you're out to raise children, then
Right.
mission accomplished. But if you're looking to raise adults, then um,
That's where
it,
the
it
work
sets
is.
the heading of thought process, decision making,
Right.
preparation, um, maturity,
Hmm.
responsibility. So it kind of sets what it is that we need to do.
Right.
And so for us, because kids are kind of,
Mhm.
some people do quality over quantity. Some people do a lot of quantity, but there's not a lot of quality.
Right.
For us, it's a little bit mix of both because we have a little bit of freedom. One of the nice
Right.
things about what it is that I do in the background
Right.
is I'm not set to a set hours.
Hmm.
I can adjust and pivot according to the
What's needed.
needs
Right.
of our family.
Right.
So, but that's just kind of more of something that we were wanting, that when we were looking for an opportunity or a solution,
Right.
it was kind of more the direction that we were looking for.
And
Absolutely.
Suleiman, if I can add,
Yes,
this is
please.
something that we talked about
Mm-hmm.
when we were dating, when
Mm-hmm.
we were 20 and 22 years old. We're
Right.
older than that now.
Right.
Um, and this is something we talked about then. We talked about that we wanted me home.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about, it'd be nice to have him home, but me, at least one parent being home was the priority
Right.
because of how both of us grew up. And, this isn't a story about our upbringing, but let's
Right.
just say that there were reasons why it was very important to us that at least one parent was going to be home with the kids, and they weren't going to be raised by someone who may still be a kid themselves, may still,
Right.
be 18 at a daycare.
Right.
And we wanted to homeschool. You talked about, school and pickup. It's not a problem because we're at home.
Right.
Sometimes our daughter does school at 9 o'clock at night
Okay.
because that's when she's in a focus mode.
Mm-hmm.
And, the other thing I would say is we've taken it a day at a time, or just kind of like a chunk at a time, or like I'd say an adaptation at
Right.
a time, right? Like, I mean, first, we had an 8 month old, and so she wasn't walking yet. Well, then she was walking. So then it was a little more dynamic to keep up with. And then we had
Right.
two of them. And, now we definitely have two of them and they can collaborate. Um,
Amazing.
but it's just very intentional, but with flexibility. And what I mean by
Mm-hmm.
that, Monday, Tuesday, the kids know that they're with me. We're going to go out on our adventures. Wednesday, Thursday, they go out with daddy for adventures. Friday's a family day. But our daughter is quality time for her love language, and our son is physical touch. And so we'll always check in with each other on,
Right.
hey, do you think Lily needs to go with you today? I'll take Quinn. Is your schedule lighter? Could that work? And so he has helped me
Mm-hmm.
not be so rigid, and I've helped him have a little bit more structure
Right.
in order to feed off of our strengths.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm this plan and schedule, and oh my gosh, it's 1:58 and we got it on here now. And
Right.
he's
Right.
like, it's cool, we're good, we're good.
Right. Amazing. Amazing.
So we empower each other there, I would say, as well. But we
Amazing.
also, last thing, I apologize,
Mm-hmm.
we fill our kids in on what's going on. Now, our son has never known that he ever left the house for an outside client for 18
Mm-hmm.
months. And he just, mommy and daddy are here. That's just his reality. Our daughter was 2.5 when we had to make that mature decision, which was super fun. So now
Mm-hmm.
she knows, she used to know, okay, what we're doing is going to help bring daddy home. And now it's to keep daddy home. And
Right.
in raising adults, we talk to our daughter,
Mm-hmm.
hey, and I think it was today or yesterday, she looked at Quinn, who's our son, and
Mm-hmm.
she said, you've got to let daddy work so he can stay home. I mean, a 4-year-old version of that, but that's what she
Right.
was saying. And I was like, yes. Like,
Yes.
because sometimes you got to say things for 6 months before it sinks in, but
Right.
she's getting it and she understands. And I want her to understand the sacrifice that goes into business ownership too. So,
Amazing. This is important. Yes, because a lot of times, when we don't let them know, like, by the way, for instance, this is a meeting, I have to attend to this. When I'm finished, we have our schedule. We're going to do XYZ as we talked about. Then they
yep.
get to understand those boundaries and understand, oh, yeah, there's work we have to respect. There's school when I go to school, something, like I respect. So they know those different time blocks, and they learn to appreciate them as they grow. This is beautiful. And also, I was going to ask you, how do you prioritize your, like your date nights and maybe with the self care, like in terms of, But I see that you already have a kind of schedule, as you mentioned, how you have time
Mhm.
for, this is the time with the daughter, like this is the time with mommy and dad, I'm sure you have that already set up already, correct?
We do. It's every Saturday night. Now, it's a
Mm-hmm.
little interesting, and I've done videos on LinkedIn about our daughter being a terrorist negotiator.
Mm-hmm.
So, date nights recently have been a movie on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But, we just took every quarter, we take a husband and wife only trip. My parents come and watch the kids. We get out, just us, so we can actually talk and have adult conversation. And that's even scheduled every quarter. Um,
Amazing.
and, it's not completely non-negotiable if something like
Mm-hmm.
super urgent was going on, but
Right.
it's definitely a priority.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it goes back to my original statement of priorities.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I mean, if you prioritize work all the time, then what happens is something in your life gets compromised. We made a decision that we'll work on our marriage. We made a decision that we were going to put each other first,
Right.
so it goes God, family, then work,
Right.
is kind of the way the flow goes.
Right.
Um,
You even told Quinn yesterday, if I have to pick between mommy or mommy or you, I'm picking mommy. I mean, we say that to our 2 and 4 year
so it's a lot of times imbalance happens because people lose their priorities,
Mm-hmm.
or people drift to the things that they think they're good at, and they
Right.
neglect the things that they need to improve in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I coach people, when I'm in relationship with people, and I'm serving people, I'll oftentimes say it's not the things that you believe that are true that hurt you, but it's the things that are false that you
think
believe
are
are
true.
true that do
Right.
hurt you. And so most of the
Yes.
time people want to camp out on what they believe is true, but they never look around at the things that they've adopted in their life that are false, that are
Right.
getting in the way of the fruit that they're wanting. So um, for us, it's a priority. And sometimes, we might go a little bit longer in a rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we may not get a date night or whatever, but we make sure it's planned and that it's a priority. And
Yeah, we'll reschedule it. I mean, Dustin's an introvert. I'm not. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to tell that real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The longer
Mm-hmm.
you keep talking to us, and so we'd
Mm-hmm.
be like, hey, like, I could do date night tonight, but I'm not really mentally there.
Mm-hmm.
Can we reschedule? But we have something to reschedule from because it's
Mm-hmm.
on the calendar. I apologize.
I would say on that, usually if there's a grinding of the gears, or somebody's lost in a priority in
Right.
an unhealthy way,
Right.
it's because of poor communication.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say most relationship challenges, even in parenting, is bad communication or lack of
Lack of,
communication.
yeah.
All right.
um, and it's like with children, for example, the reason why we're in the direction that we're in, we didn't, there's nothing wrong with the school system. I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm not tearing it down. We
Mm-hmm.
chose not to because I couldn't always guarantee the individual that was going to be building into my child when I'm not there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to forfeit the responsibility to somebody else,
Right.
and then live with the consequences of that poor judgment that that individual put into my child. And I can't get mad about it. However, when my children do something and we are literally their number one relationship that's in their life,
Right.
I always have to step back and go, where did this come from? What's the influence? And
Mm-hmm.
it's us. And so I have to correct it here before I
Right.
correct it there.
Mm-hmm.
But versus when you go into a little bit more of a macro social settings,
Mm-hmm.
you forfeit the freedom of choice in some things because you're choosing a different path. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you also have to accept that you're going to allow other people to imprint ideas and thoughts on your children that you may not want there.
Right.
And we chose not to. And we see the reward of it. And, I had somebody argue me one time. They weren't really arguing. It was usually when you have two people who come together with two
Right.
different beliefs,
Right.
they don't want to come, they don't want to walk away feeling wrong. So what they do is they try to change you,
Mm-hmm.
um, versus them admitting that maybe there's something there that they can think about. And
Right.
so this lady started trying to tell me, well, their social life, they won't have any social life, and they won't have any social skills, and all this other stuff. If they don't go to school, they don't learn this stuff. And it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
I promise you, like, I go out in public, my children have no social, like, they have no problems. Like, they will walk up to a stranger.
Yeah.
They have amazing social
They have
skills.
better social skills than
And
most.
and again, that's not
With
tearing it down.
adults, not just the kids.
That's
Right.
not a tearing down the lady's
Mm-hmm.
perspective. It
Mm-hmm.
was just the direction that the lady chose. And so that's what she's solidified her argument around and her belief around, when it's not
Mm-hmm.
true.
Right.
Because when you have involved and engaged parents, that's part of your responsibility as a parent, is to make sure you're cultivating healthy social life. And if
Right.
you're the number one influence, they should see that you're having a healthy social life, and they
Right.
learn and they mirror and mimic that. So that's a responsibility we chose to take. We chose not to forfeit it.
I think this
And
is.
our kids, they will gravitate to talking to adults before they will gravitate to talking to kids, because our daughter's pretty self-aware. I mean, there's those times where I think she's self-selectively not self-aware, but she
Mm-hmm.
is very self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows she's above some of the kids sometimes, and she's like, I can't relate to this. Like she, so like when we go to story time every Monday, she hangs out with the librarian at her desk, and
Mm,
like kids will come up and talk, and she'll be like, oh, Miss Shannon will be right back. I mean,
mhm.
she's like
Right.
way older than four,
Mhm.
but she's around us majority of the time. That's who she's
Right.
around.
Mhm.
Or there's other adults there for the play day because we're going to hang out generally with other parents that are stay at home or
Right.
homeschooling and things like that. So like I wrote about this a couple days ago,
Mhm.
that this is their normal, right? Like they go and drive by like a daycare or preschool, and she's like, mommy, what's that?
Mhm.
And she has no clue. Like this is
Mhm.
this is what she thinks normal is, and I never want that to change.
Mhm.
um that's something that's pretty important to us.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, and it is challenging for people like the lady that was not criticizing, the one that was like discussing with you, Dustin, about why she thinks is that as good, like is not as good of an option. I think it's because, for instance, before the before the pandemic, I was working out,
Mm-hmm.
more, like, most of the time I was outside. By the time with the pandemic, you're there all the time, so it's totally different. So you is it the adjustment is not easy. So for a lot of people, when they think like, okay, you're going to be there with your child and educate them and work and do everything else, is too much for them to understand, and also they think you won't be able to handle it. But in reality, once you face it and you train yourself through time, you'll be just perfect. And actually, I love it in a sense because you make sure that all your morals, they transfer to them, and it's much
Mm-hmm.
easier that way, because a lot of times when they come back from school, they say, no, but Madam so and so say, like something else. They argue with you on things that based on how you're raised. It shouldn't, it should
Mm-hmm.
not be a discussion about it. Because you
Right.
have somebody else on the other side that believe that, which is, it can be good in a sense, like, you can educate them, and then they can know, by the way, okay, so school, there's another school of thought, and my parents, they have a
Perspective.
different, which is good. So
Yeah.
I mean, I truly appreciate that. I think it's an amazing thing. I have another guest that was here before. He's doing the same thing, homeschooling, and it needs dedication, and I think you guys, it demonstrate how determined you are, and it shows in your business, it shows your home. This is beautiful. We truly appreciate you doing this. But what about when you have the disagreement? Have you shown them how to handle disagreements? Because this is something that definitely they'll have to learn as adults.
I'll let you take that one, sweetie.
Um, we're probably not always the best at handling disagreements.
Hmm.
We're literally completely two different people
Hmm.
with two different backgrounds.
Hmm.
But one of the things that our kids do see is that we work it out,
Mhm.
and we do
Hmm.
talk it through. And
Hmm.
the end of the day, or the priority of the day, is peace
Right.
in the house.
Right.
And so they see communication. Um, if they ever do see us, a little bit more of a higher volume discussion,
Hmm.
um, their desires to mediate, believe it or not, they
Right.
want to get in
Yeah.
between us. They want to time us out, because in their mind, they can't imagine or fathom
Hmm.
us being at odds with each other.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so having them as a constant audience,
Mhm.
is a constant reminder for us to figure it out,
Yeah.
Hmm.
quicker than later.
It's a
Hmm.
whole nother level of living in
Um,
a glass house.
Hmm.
I had a mentor once tell me that children are a measuring stick to your
Right.
life, and
Right.
it's really true.
Hmm.
And so, if anything, like whenever we do have disagreements, or if you know, um, we're just you know we're neglecting something that we have forgotten,
Hmm.
um, they do see an example of kind of working through, if that makes sense. And one of the
Okay.
things that I want our kids to know is that conflict is going to happen. Even in the best of relationship, there's going to be disagreements,
Absolutely.
and it's okay to have disagreement. It's how you handle that and all that.
Hmm.
So I can't sit here and tell you that we're a perfect example.
No, no.
Um, there's
Because 2 nights ago, our daughter had to mediate.
yeah. So, um, you know, there's always something, when you're spinning so many plates, you're dropping the ball somewhere.
Right.
And I would say the biggest thing is, I want our kids to see grace for the most part.
Right.
That, um, you know, that the when I enter in somebody's life and I start to coach and I start to mentor them, or I start to work with them or build into them, I
Right.
let them know right away I'm probably going to fail you.
Mm-hmm.
I let them know I'm just a guy. I don't have it all figured out, and I'm probably going to say something that will offend, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not my heart.
Mm-hmm.
But my heart and my desire is growth in that person's life. But through that process for communication, I'm
Mm-hmm.
probably going to say something, um, that is going to hurt when I didn't mean it to hurt.
Right.
And so, I ask for a lot of times a lot of grace. And so, um, as we extend a lot of grace to our children,
Right.
especially when they're picking paint off the wall, or they're breaking something,
Right.
we ask for them to extend this grace too,
Mm-hmm.
because it's important. Because without grace, then who can be judged or
Right.
not judged. So, um, it's something, an area that I think Annalise and I are always improving in, because she's more type A driven and I'm way more relaxed. I take more of a slower process to things, when she's kind of like, if it's a task on her list, she wants it done now.
Yesterday.
If
Right.
we can
Right.
get there faster by 15 minutes, she wants to take
Mm-hmm.
that route. If I want to take a safer, more
Mm-hmm.
reliable route,
Right.
um, it's a little bit of a different process. But at the end of the day, so long as we get to the destination and the goal,
Mm-hmm.
it's what matters.
And
Right.
Solomon, what I would add is, it's let us teach them about just conflict in general.
Right.
Like if her and her brother, now that they're older,
Mm-hmm.
when they were younger, like this wasn't possible. But now that they're a little older, I'm like, work it out and then apologize.
Mm-hmm.
This is, and I read recently, I can't remember where I read it, but that is one of the points of sibling rivalry. It's one of the greatest growth places that people or kids are going to have in conflict management. um, but our daughter will say, hey, to daddy, look at the feelings chart.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've done her feelings chart since 2.5, and
Mm-hmm.
if she does witness or seeing us argue, we'll go in and we'll talk to her, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll let her know everything's going to be okay. Mommy and daddy are still here, we're
Mm-hmm.
good. We were just working something out, and we'll say, like, you and Quinn need to.
Mm-hmm.
And she'll go, it's starting to click a little bit more. But one of the core memories I have, when I was, let's say I was around 11 or 13 or somewhere around
Mm-hmm.
there.
Okay.
My mom and my dad were having a really hard time. My mom was overcoming some challenges, and it took a very loyal, patient person like my dad,
Right.
to stick it out. And I remember him sitting on the porch with me saying, I want to leave, but I'm not going to. I'm going to work it out with your mom. I'm going to do that for you and your sister. And it was just such a, I mean, I can picture sitting on the porch with him right now. And it was really one of the paintbrushes, so to speak, that
Mm-hmm.
really, is carried through my whole life. I think it's why, I'm probably loyal to a fault, and will maybe, stay in some things that aren't the healthiest.
Right.
And it was a little slower to learn that in my life than
Mm-hmm.
someone else, because loyalty and steadfastness were such things that I saw modeled growing up. And I want our kids to see that too.
And I'd say the last thing to that would be, whenever there is conflict,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like parents have this infallible, like, I know everything, and I can't be held to account. And
Right.
I think that's actually false. I find whenever we do have a situation, and if I do find I'm wrong,
Right.
um, I apologize. I apologize to her. I ask for forgiveness. And then I turn right around and I will go to my children's room and I will kneel down beside their bed and I'll get on their level and I will apologize to my children.
Right.
And I'll ask for forgiveness from them because I set a poor example. Because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, I don't want my children to marry individuals,
That don't know how to
that don't know
apologize.
how to apologize, or
Mm-hmm.
can only live in the offense,
Right.
and not in the freedom of grace. And so, I will go and I will kneel down with them and I will admit to them, like, hey, daddy made a mistake.
Right.
And every single time they throw their arms around my neck and they say, it's okay, you are a good daddy. And they remind me of who I can be. Just because I
Mm-hmm.
failed in that moment doesn't mean
Right.
that I'm a failure as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's very
so
humbling.
I'm accountable. Not only accountable to my clients or
Mm-hmm.
to our clients, I'm accountable to my wife. I'm accountable to my children.
Right.
And this thing called what we're doing, marriage,
Mm-hmm.
family, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
um, really cannot function with accountability in all directions.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
Without
it's
account.
without accountability. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but sometimes it's tiring to eat humble pie.
Not
Right.
your favorite
It's
dessert.
not filling. There's zero
Right.
calories.
Right.
But I never want my children to not apologize. If it means that they can establish healing and they can establish healthy communication and relationships, then there's nothing wrong with apologizing. And so I'll do that. And I'm,
Amazing.
I'm happy to lay that pride down for my family to set that example.
Absolutely.
And so our kids are quick to apologize whenever they have conflict between each other. And I'll look at them like, all right, you need to apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And they immediately turn around and they're hugging, and there's no
Right.
pride or anything that they hug and they go, that's okay, I forgive
Mm-hmm.
you, and they're back to playing again. And I think a lot of
Nice.
that is because of the example that we do, and it's not an easy road,
Absolutely.
especially with all the things that are pulling at you mentally
Right.
and time wise.
Mm-hmm.
It would be so much easier to just be like, they're tough kids, I can, they'll deal with it, they'll
Mm-hmm.
learn. But it's really in
Mm-hmm.
that moment, it's time to set the example.
Right.
So
And I think a lot of uh, people as a whole, but I think men as well,
Mm-hmm.
they might think that they are, well, and women too. So just people,
Mm-hmm.
that they might think that they're being seen as weak when they
Mm-hmm.
apologize. But I know how much strength it takes. It's something I'm ever growing in. He's better at it than I am,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like I'm admitting some kind of fault
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when I'm, apologizing, and that's not the point. And he's
Mm-hmm.
teaching me that. But
Right.
it is so important for our kids to see.
Amazing.
And they'll do it out in public too. Like if they're at one of their fitness classes or story times or whatever, and
Right.
something happens, is I'll see them apologize. And I have so many parents comment to me
Mm-hmm.
about our kids and how they
We're
interact
proper.
socially. So again,
Yes.
back to that lady.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
and it's really kind of
Amazing.
funny you say that, because it's like we live in a society where you could apologize to people blue in the face, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't know how to receive it, because
Mm-hmm.
when you hold on to offense, you feel like
Mm-hmm.
you're owed something.
Mm-hmm.
But when you accept an apology, you're ripping
Mm-hmm.
up the IOU,
Mm-hmm.
and you can no longer be a victim.
Right.
And so you can apologize for something to blow in the face, but if people don't know how to receive an apology and
Mm-hmm.
allow it to end at that point,
Mm-hmm.
then the problem just stays the problem,
Yeah.
and you're
Mm-hmm.
just constantly solving something that's unproductive. So I want my children to be able to see an example of a healthy apology, not just a backhanded apology, but a sincere apology,
Right.
but to also release the offense of whatever happened, so that they're not carrying that forward, which is
Right.
really important, because if you can't release the offense, then all you're going to do is carry that you're just going to relive the problem over and over and over again. You won't experience the freedom that you're looking for. And so that's
Absolutely.
an example that we work hard to make sure we do.
Oh, this is beautiful. And so along the what we have just spoken about, what do you see as the most challenging part of being together, besides the handling of the communication, or you know the like the work, or just the educating the kids? What is the most challenging part of being together as parents?
Honestly, we don't really have an answer there, because we're kind of in the early stages of discussing that.
Uh-huh.
I was talking to some people that I do trust, and they have some influence in my life, and I was
Hmm.
just kind of letting them know kind of like what we hit,
Hmm.
because my mindset is, um, if you're right there in front of the problem, like for example, if there's trash on the ground and it needs to be
Right.
picked up, and you're right there, just pick it up.
Right. Right.
But people have this mindset going, well, it's not my job, I don't have to do it, somebody else will do it. But they go into a
Hmm.
restaurant, they'll destroy, an area, they'll leave food all over the ground and all that, and they go, that's not my problem, it's my server, that's why I tipped them $2. When that's an unhealthy way of viewing it. So my mentality is like, if we're as a family, it's just like if, dishes need to be put up or a room needs to be picked up or something. And
Hmm.
if you're there and you notice it, then do it. Like there's
Right.
no, it's just, but as our responsibility levels increase and all that, and we're always looking for ways to kind of offload unproductive responsibility. Um, we've had a couple of people mention to us that maybe setting up some roles.
Mhm.
And at first I resisted it, but I'm starting to see a little bit of wisdom in the desire to create roles and establish, what we're responsible for.
Right.
But the thing that I am trying to avoid in our family is the complacency of, or the expectancy of, you know what, it's
He's
their
gonna
job.
do it.
They're going to do
Uh-huh.
it. I
Right.
don't have to be bothered. And it's like,
Mm.
well, part of servitude is doing stuff that is not expected of you.
Right.
Going the extra mile is doing stuff that's not expected of you, and it's
Right.
inconvenience.
Right.
But if it means the ship moves forward and the team wins together, then it does that. I have not figured out a way on how to communicate
Hmm.
that to the best, because Annalise is a little bit more roles and task oriented.
Hmm.
Um, and we're bringing two different ideologies to the table.
Right. Hmm.
While we're on the ocean trying to tread water, and we've got two
Right.
children, and somebody comes up and goes, "Here's another one. Figure it
Right.
out." So we don't really
Not
have,
yet.
we
No,
don't, not yet. No,
there's not another
we
one.
don't have another one yet. But my point is, um,
Let's just be clear.
Some
my
clarity
point
there.
is that
Okay.
we don't really have an answer on that one. And
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to be in a place and not have an answer, but we are in the process of discussing a rhythm that works for us.
Right.
Well, and Suleiman, I, of course, have a different answer. I would say Dustin said the words that is our biggest challenge is just, it's just the two completely different ways that we approach life, and realizing, you know, the number one mentor in my life, she always says, if there are two ways to get to a place,
Hmm.
I will find one, my husband will find the other.
Right.
And I think for me, it's realizing that that's okay.
Hmm.
That, as long as we get there,
Right.
and, as he says, it's moral and it's ethical, then it's
Hmm.
all right.
Right.
Um, and I think just also, just that programming that comes from how we were raised,
Right.
that plus the two different personalities and the approaches, and just, but the fact that we're always willing to communicate it, as ugly as that might be sometimes, I feel like it's
Hmm.
less ugly than
Hmm.
it used to be.
Hmm.
Then the ship is still moving forward.
Right.
So that'd be, but I think that's any couple,
Hmm.
right? I
Absolutely.
mean, one of
Hmm.
my favorite quotes in the world is, if two of you are exactly the same, one of you isn't necessary. I
Hmm.
mean, we don't need two of me and we don't need
Hmm.
two of him. We need
Right.
us
You
bringing our
complement each
strengths
other.
together
Yes.
and seeing each other's blind spots,
Hmm.
and our kids seeing that.
Right.
Because, not to be cute here, but your podcast is called Dad Puzzles. I mean, that is a family, right?
Right.
Like,
Absolutely.
my daughter and I are
Hmm.
very similar in some aspects and
Hmm.
very different. And she's very similar with Dustin in some and very different in others. And
Right.
we all make different puzzles,
Right.
right? And it's, I'm a little bit more empathetic,
Hmm.
think we can say. So,
Hmm.
that's one of my strengths that I feel,
Hmm.
but he's a little less emotionally attached sometimes, and sometimes that's needed.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
and that's a positive. And it's
Right.
just knowing when to use those strengths when they're strengths, and covering for each other when they're weaknesses. But you wanted to add
Yeah,
something.
and I would say, like, in the process of like not having an answer,
Hmm.
I would also say, for example, like I'm the primary cook in the family.
Right.
I'm pretty much primarily the cleaner too.
Hmm.
And so I like a tidy space. I like a little bit
Hmm.
of organization. I can
Right.
tolerate clutter because, like, we got two little tornadoes running around and they don't
Right.
know everything.
Absolutely.
Um, but you know, part of my thought process, and something I've been filtering on, I've been kind of thinking about, is we can get into arguments over roles and all that, or we
Hmm.
can set our mindset to the task of making enough money and then go, you know what, I hire a house cleaner
Hmm.
or I hire somebody to pre-prep food.
Meal prep.
Right.
And some people can look at me and be like, well, aren't you being lazy and all that? And it's like, no, I've only got so much time in a day. I've only got
Right.
so much mental capacity.
Hmm.
And if I'm spending that time doing this over here, I'm taking it from something over here. And so if it means I have to serve a few more clients,
Mhm.
so that I can pay somebody else to have a better life,
Right.
and my life has gotten so big that I need help with it,
Right.
then what's wrong with that? If somebody's willing to do that service for us, then it's a
Right.
win in all directions. It's not about being, an elite status or anything like that. It's part of
Mhm.
just solving the equation of just not enough.
Right.
And so some of the things that we're kind of working through right now is just like, once we kind of settle a little bit more of a heading in some of the direction that we want to head, um, is what else do we want in that equation? Like, what do we want that lifestyle to look like?
Okay.
And, having somebody come through the house, even once a week just to do busy work, so to speak, that, her or I don't have to do,
Right.
that's a 2 hours a week that I could be going, hey kid, let's go to the zoo, or hey honey, let's
Right.
go on a date, let's get a babysitter. You know, things that I can't buy now. I can buy it with money by paying somebody else to do it in my life, so I can free up the time to go over there and do the things that I'm more needed in her life than I am
Right.
needed in cleaning, because she doesn't care about the cleaning, but I do. Does that make
Right.
sense? And so
Right.
that's part of the thought process and decision making of going, okay, like if this is the grand picture of what it is that I'm looking for, and I want more time with her, and I want more time with my children, then I have to look at things, what are getting in the way, what are my options and solutions.
Right.
I have a gentleman that I'm building into, and he's become a really good friend of mine, and he's come up on some challenges, and some of it's financial, and he started freaking out, and I just looked at him and I said, man, be grateful it's financial. I
Mhm.
said finances are the easiest thing to fix. All it is you out earn the problem, and it's no longer the problem.
Right.
Prioritize your spending, prioritize your budgets,
Right.
find something that you can give yourself a raise without
Right.
permission,
Hmm.
and you're good to go. You've solved your problem. It's a little bit different if you've been given 6 months to live, and now you got to go to your bucket list and go, how much can I get this off?
Right.
That's a little bit more challenging.
Hmm.
A lot of problems still are financial, but we lock ourselves into our solutions, the quality and the availability of our solutions based off of an hour to dollar ratio, when it
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily have to be that way. If you can only make 60 grand a year,
Hmm.
40 to 60 hours a week, that's all you'll ever make.
Hmm.
So you may never be able to have the option of a house cleaner. And so my dad would look at me like, we can clean our own house and it's the pride. And it's like, that's great. You're right, Dad. You're right. But
Hmm.
I sure as heck missed you, when I hit about 12, being my youth pastor. I missed you being my coach in T-ball and baseball,
Hmm.
because you had to prioritize work and paying for a family of six. I sure as heck missed that. And I
Right.
sure as heck wouldn't have minded having a cleaner come through and get those extra 2 hours. So when you start to remove, and again, it goes back to the thought process of,
Right.
it's not the things that you believe that are true, but it's the
Hmm.
things that you believe are true that are false that get in the way. And
Or what your parents always did.
correct. And it's just like, if we have the ability to write our future, then it's all on the table, and we're looking for ways and scenarios to do that. And
Amazing.
I'm more than happy to be able to provide that, as a family, if it means that I'm more available and more accessible. The goal is for me not to, the goal is not to be less accessible. The goal is for me to be more accessible to the people that I love and care. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. So we're gonna transition. Um, wow, that's very important. Because what you have said, shared, I can expand on it again and again, and in a sense that it's gonna be different in every family. So I'm sure folks they'll see where they are, and they have to make that adjustment, you know, on their own. And in business, you can equate this with scaling. Like if you're on a scale, you have to start to allocate like some of your duties so that you're available to do more on something that is going to help you to grow and such, which is what you're doing at the moment. This is very, very helpful.
Yep.
Did you have anything else to add, based on what we have spoken about? Because we're going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. What's the impact of that with the family? With your family life when you trying to have those things going on at the same time.
I think Dustin covered it just fine. So we
But
can go to the next question.
amazing, amazing. And so I know so far you guys have great communication. As a couple, this is very beautiful, and also just accepting when you're wrong. I think is something that is beautiful and honorable to have, and do, because sometimes like you're even pushed to, like it touches you. For instance, like your son wants to hang out with you, but they have to sleep early because tomorrow is time for school. So be like, but you gotta go to sleep. But so the last vision of me seeing him go to sleep and happy, it touches you. You're like, oh man, like you stop everything like you're doing. You're trying to, like like accompany them with sleep and everything else. But so some of these things you can do based on the schedule and what or the reality of things in terms of apologizing. But also, I think the more you do it, the more you have that love. I mean, things just flow easily. For instance, if your wife, for instance, Dustin is doing the cooking all the time and he's feeling ill,
That's takeout, Suleiman. If I cook, it's
And I love it. Do it more.
takeout.
100%. I love it when she cooks.
My
yeah.
cooking's takeout.
100%. Mexican, Indian, do it. I'm down.
Oh
Yeah,
my
that's
goodness,
Bring it
yes,
in.
yes. Oh, for me, it's vice versa. My wife, she's the cook, and she only loves my fish because they're fry or whatever. That's the only thing I can do, and my kids, they make fun of me that I can make the simplest things possible. But yeah. So, but
I
whenever
see
it's,
that.
the
Mhm.
yes, you know what I mean. So whenever there's a problem in one, or there's a like a priority or something else, then we always adjust because we love each other and we know the bigger goal. That's how it goes. Because I think when we are big, when we become too rigid, that's where we have problems. And
Yeah.
amazing, amazing. So, are you guys? Let's see, you have some people, they have, where like whenever they have conflicts, they will not even show, discuss anything in front of the kids. If it's something that is severe, they will try to do things behind the door. But then you have couples that are very vocal, in a sense that almost like enemies, but then they will discuss until in the end everything is good. But kids, they get to see the ugly side of things. I don't know which what endpoint are you in.
I think it really comes down to like whatever the situation of the
Yeah, the
topic is,
topic.
and
uh
then how toxic it is between us.
Yeah.
right.
Biggest thing is we always are just looking, going, how much damage, and can we build from it, or are
You're
we
right.
doing long-term damage? So
Hmm.
we do try to be mindful
Amazing.
of things, but most of the time, most of our agreements are simply because we misunderstand each other,
Mm.
Right.
and we don't mind our children seeing us going through the process of understanding each other.
Right.
Yeah. I would agree. I would say it's based on the topic. Um,
Absolutely.
our daughter is very sensitive to emotional things, and
Hmm.
so we try to take that into consideration as well.
Hmm.
Um, but she's also like her mom, and she wants to be involved, and so
Right. Right.
sometimes there's no stopping them from being involved.
Hmm.
Um, it's just, I think, just like every situation in life, right? Like it's just situational.
Absolutely.
It really depends on what's going on at that day and that time, and what
Right.
happened the day before, and what are we prepping for. I mean, it always changes
Yeah,
it.
and there's no formula for it. And I
Mm-mm.
think the biggest thing for anybody, I would say, who's listening to us is there's not a perfect answer.
Mm-mm.
You don't have it
Right.
all figured out. There's a lot of stuff in your programming from, you know, years ago, from the examples that your parents set, that you don't think will play, that
Hmm.
will come out.
Yep.
And
Right.
I think it goes back to this thing that I was talking about, is like making sure you're giving yourself and your family grace, because you're going to screw it up. And
Right.
it's not a matter of the screw up. Here's an example. Like when I'm apologizing to my daughter, she never tells me how bad I was. She tells me how good I am.
Mhm.
And it's an amazing and innocent thing, but it's an accurate thing in parenting too.
Mhm.
Like, I've learned more from being a dad and from my
Right.
children,
Mhm.
just
Absolutely.
from the unsolicited love and forgiveness and grace that they offer me.
Oh man.
It is absolutely humbling. But when she
Absolutely.
hugs my neck and she tells me I'm a good dad,
Hmm.
she's not telling me I'm I'm a good dad in general. She's telling me that I will always be a good dad. She's telling me what my future is too.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
she doesn't. I don't know if she is fully aware of what she means when she's doing it,
Hmm.
but she's not telling me the 50 wrongs that I did, or she's not
Hmm.
going, we have to hash this out.
Right.
She's hugging me, going, I love you, and I know you can basically be better.
We're moving
And
on.
she's setting that bar for me.
Right.
And I want to rise to that, because that's important to me. It's not
Right.
always easy, but it
Mm-hmm.
is important to me.
No, but she will also call us out. Like I think was it this morning or maybe yesterday? Because I think we had our discussion 2 days before. She goes, "Okay, when we go to nap, you guys have to be nice to each other." I mean, she'll slip those in there too.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Right.
But I mean, she's mature beyond her years, and she has no clue.
Beautiful.
But
Beautiful.
it'll it'll hit you square between the eyes and be like, "Ooh, okay, like you want to be better."
Right.
Yeah, and so
Absolutely.
it's I've learned a lot from that, and it
Mm-hmm.
also has taught me in correcting our children that I'm always telling them what they are, not what their actions are doing. If that makes sense, like
Right.
I'm always trying. If I have to correct them, if I have to correct them, I correct them, but then I let them know that they are good,
Mhm.
that they are a
Right.
blessing, that they are loved,
Amazing.
because they do it for me too. And I feel and see the reward of that just
Mm-hmm.
from that relationship. So um, all I'm saying is that just don't think you have all the answers. Just be willing to be humble.
Absolutely.
If you're not humble, you will be humbled, and you don't want to go through the process of being humbled. Accept humility.
Absolutely.
It's way easier.
Absolutely. And what you said is definitely 100% correct. And also for families that let's say, because we have different backgrounds. The way you're raised. For instance, your kids, they will carry that and attract the energy of somebody in a similar situation. We hope, but then sometimes you have people that are coming from. No, because sometimes when they grow up, they might like their own kids or whatever. Like those things. As parents, they concern you. Uh, but I'm saying in a sense that sometimes some like some of our listeners or some of the people that we coach or what they have different backgrounds, and some of the let's say is a lady or is a man, they grew up in a family where mom and dad, they're very vocal and I think almost disrespectful. So imagine you are in that marriage, like you're in that relationship, you to fix it, it's going to take some time, and so those
Mhm.
those type of people, they definitely need more humility and grace to correct the other one and educate, and the whole coaching, and like with time they'll become better, but I know is we have all kinds of people in the world at the moment that are having different backgrounds, and for instance, what you just mentioned, how some people, they don't clean up because they say, oh yeah, I'm paying a tip, so they will clean up. But you have people that have been raised well. That's what I'm saying. Like like what you're mentioning, they will do things that are right, not necessarily about because I pay you or because it's your schedule or because of this kind of thing. Is almost reminds me of. I remember when like when I was beginning relationships, it was more like, oh, it's 50-50. I pay this part of the
Mhm.
rent, you pay part of the rent. It's like, excuse me, like where I grew up. Now my history comes in where I grew up. For instance, dad handle things, like no worries, dad will take care of this, mom is going to take care of the other stuff, but it's not going to be like I have to do this, you have to do that. Otherwise, it becomes like excuse me, are we family or are we roommates or something like that? So I'm sorry, I'm
Right.
rambling in a sense to prove the point that family,
You're good.
folks are from different backgrounds, and we have
Yeah.
we are telling them, okay, by the way, if it's very hard for you, reach out to us, we can talk to you and on how we can fix that, because I think that like Dusty just shared that he's doing the coaching. This is beautiful. I do coaching as well, and folks, I think they need to understand that they're coming from different. They have different. Like starting points. So it's not gonna be. I'm gonna be like Dustin and Annalisa in, like overnight. No, it's gonna take some time. It's gonna take some time, and you guys are doing a great work. So thank you so much for sharing this. So maybe we can switch gears a little bit into the self care, because this is very important. Very important part. How do you like help each other to grow, like like Dustin, for instance, or you, analyst, in terms of bettering yourself, in terms of your career, or in terms of your building that humility or building that communication. How do you guys like help each other to do that? It's very broad.
Um, yeah, self care is an interesting one because I think it has changed over the different seasons we've been in.
Right.
Like when she was dating me and she's
Mm-hmm.
like, "You want to be alone by
Mm-hmm.
yourself?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're nuts. now that we have children, she's
Uh-huh.
just like, get the kids out of here. She's giving me the crazy eyes. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, you know that if you're not out the door within 15 seconds, like, there's going to be, consequences. And so you're like, run. So I think it's really kind of changed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would say an area that we're currently on solving,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and we're a couple months out from being able to solve it,
Okay.
is pre-kids. We used to go on dates all the time. And
Mm.
if there was a disagreement or a misunderstanding to anything, we would go to dinner. We'd go in a public place. We
Mhm.
would sit down and we would enjoy a really nice meal. And if we were there for 2.5 hours, we were there for 2.5 hours, and we talked through and we took turns hearing each other. you
Perfect.
know but when you throw in the dynamics of children,
Right.
you get caught up in the tornado of life. Some things can fall away, or
Absolutely.
situations that come in that was unexpected, that are out of your control. And so, we see, one of the things I think we both came to agreement on is that part of the rhythm of our life and the health of our relationship is, you can call it date night if you want, but time where we set it off to the side where this is exclusively us.
Right.
We're in a season where babysitters are a little bit harder to come by,
And
but
expensive.
it's quickly being corrected.
Uh-huh.
Um, and we're also very picky over the
Mhm.
babysitters that we let in, especially with a lot of the different, opinions out there in the world.
Right.
Um, and but like, that's one of the things that we're working towards adding back in. I like downtime, meaning like, um, I do my best thinking. If I've got problems on my mind and if I'm taking care of everything else, I can't solve, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I can't apply creative energy to it. So I take one night a week after the kids go to bed for the most part, and that's my time. And I usually bounce back energized. I have answers, I have solutions. I'm able to process, I'm able to kind of, turn the brain off in some sections.
Right.
Annalise is now starting to realize that she's needing it too. And so, I'm having to develop the habit of checking in, going, hey, what day this week do you want? And I'll take the kids so you can go out and do what you need to do. Um, you know, go get, your pumpkin spice, whatever.
Be my basic
Yeah.
white chick.
Right.
That's what he
Um,
calls me, Solomon.
so
Okay. Okay.
so
Okay.
right now it's, we're problem solving that one right now.
Amazing.
We're
Amazing.
not bad at it, but,
Mhm.
I think it's just we realized our needs have changed in
Right.
that area from when we were
Well, I mean,
just a
and this
couple to a
was
family.
my recognition of needing what I affectionately call his alone night.
Mhm.
Because I did when we were dating. I mean, when
Mhm.
you're dating, right? Like you come over and like, I mean, we were together every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'd go to church. Like that was our rhythm. So I didn't see what he did Monday through
Yep.
Thursday. So
Uh-huh.
when we got married, and he goes, "This is my alone night." I said, "You what?" And I said, "You want to spend time by yourself on
Mhm.
purpose
Mhm.
without me? Like what?"
Yes.
But
Mhm.
now, like, I mean, when you add in, and when you have one kid, I mean, unless they're like colicky or
Right.
special needs, and I'm not putting any of that down. Those are my heroes, the parents that
Mhm.
raised them, but
Mhm.
they're carry on, right? I
Mhm.
mean, you stick the car seat, you walk through Target, like they're
Mhm.
fine.
Yeah.
But you add in two, right? And you're
Right.
potty training one and you're nursing the other, and it's
Yeah.
like
It becomes
that
hectic.
element like keeps changing, right? Like
Right.
because our kids are 21 months apart. So at one point we did have two under two.
Okay. Okay.
And so just me realizing like what I struggled with, and maybe someone listening to this might relate to this, especially
Mhm.
just being type A, being task oriented, is I've got it, right?
Mhm.
Like I'll be okay. I can figure it out. And I think so many people are accused of being selfish
Mhm.
because they had the self image and whatever you want to call it
Mhm.
to speak up about it. And it was one of those things that I thought was right, but it was wrong.
Mhm.
And I'm actually doing something good for my kids. I'm doing something good for my husband and myself. I mean, it is self care, but it's good for them too, because then I come back and I'm not like up to here, as
Mhm.
I call it.
Mhm.
And it's actually loving to
Right.
do it. And I
Right.
think that that is such a misperception in the world. And as always, Dustin's ahead of his time.
Mhm.
Um, but a couple, see, I noticed. But a
Mhm.
couple months ago, I was sniping at him about his alone night. I was being snarky, and he was like, "What's the deal? Like, I mean, we've been married for 17 years. This isn't new."
Right.
And so I took a step back and I was like, "Why am I?" And I was like, "You know what? Because I resent it because I want it too, but I haven't asked for it. So I can't be mad at him that
Right.
I didn't ask for it."
Mm-hmm.
Right? My mom always says the answer is always no if you don't ask.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the answer is still no,
Right.
but if you speak up about it, and then we not only have our together night,
Right.
so we have a lot of nights, right? We've got
Mm-hmm.
the mornings with mom, the mornings
Mm-hmm.
with dad, we've got our date night, but we have his night, we have my night, we
Right.
have the day where I take our son and he takes our daughter, and then we switch,
Right.
right? So they're all getting time, and it's all it takes very intentional planning.
Right.
But to go back to you mentioned, I don't know how far back it was, but
Mm-hmm.
that some people, I think it was when you were talking about the pandemic,
Right. Right.
and that people were having to adjust. I think the people that struggle with adjusting don't want to adjust. And I
Mm-hmm.
think with us, it's things that we want. And so we're willing to
Right.
figure it out. We know it
Mm-hmm.
might take some time, right?
Right.
I mean, we've had, as our daughter's gotten older and she's been able to communicate certain likes, dislikes, things that
Right.
bother her. Again,
Mm-hmm.
our son's just either crying or he's happy because that's just the stage he's in right now,
Right.
which is
Right.
his favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But our daughter, she's getting more mature and being able to communicate things. And we're like, okay, like, great. Like, let's figure this out. And, we'll
Right.
tell her sometimes, hey, this might take us a minute to figure out. We're talking to her about patience,
Mm-hmm.
but we're going to figure it out because it's important.
Yeah, and
Right.
I would add is I think you kind of called it out is everything in most people's lives is a season.
Mhm.
Right.
Your kids are only going to be two for so long. Your kids are only going to be four
Right.
for so long.
Yeah.
And
Right.
those seasons require different things. And I think when you recognize that it's a season, it's not a permanent thing. And it
Right.
would be very easy to accept like this is going to be forever. And then
Mm-hmm.
the future looks bleak.
Right.
It's more looking at it going, this is a season. This is a small patch of time
Mm-hmm.
that this intensity is there.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something you tell me all the time.
Yeah. And I have to remind her that like
That's right. That's right, TJ.
and so when you recognize it's a season, it produces hope. It gives you
Mm-hmm.
kind of a destination that you're working towards, a result. The other
Mm-hmm.
part of it is, I'm also a little bit cautious on self-care because I know quite a few relationships that have an unhealthy level of self-care,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that they're so wrapped up in themselves that they can't be effective to anybody else around them. And they dominate the environments and everything about them. And
Mm-hmm.
basically it went into the direction of gluttony in the sense of like there's never enough time for self-care, and that's unhealthy either. I had a
Mm-hmm.
gentleman call me. He's a good friend of mine. This was a few years back, and he was like, he was crying, and he said he was dealing with some thoughts, and he had depression, and I'm like, dude, stop being selfish. And that's just kind of me.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm not being selfish. I said, now people are going to get mad at me on this topic. Okay, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. This is just first us and second opinion. I said, most cases that I've been around people, depression is basically you're rooted in yourself. You're just thinking about you all the time. And he didn't believe me. And I said, come on over. And so he came on over, and he was basically Eeyore walking in, and I said, let's go downstairs. And he's like, okay, like this is weird. And I said, let's go. And I threw him a gi, and I said, put that on. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay. And I was like, all right, we're gonna wrestle. And
He's
he
a
was,
martial artist, just to
yeah.
give
And I
some
said,
context to
Amazing.
this.
yeah, I said,
Amazing.
I said, we're gonna wrestle. And he's like, well, I got to go to work. I said, you're gonna go to work tired, worn out, and you're gonna be
Mm-hmm.
very happy when we're done.
Right.
And so we start wrestling for like an hour and a half. And
I remember this.
and he stands up, and like he's got like a glow, and he's happy and all this stuff. And I said, so are you depressed right now? And he goes, no. And I said, guess what? You're cured.
Right.
And I said, my point to that is that if you're not serving somebody else in your life,
Mm-hmm.
then the inevitable thing that's going to happen is you're going to become depressed. And so self-care should only be a small window.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be a permanent ongoing thing where you're so wrapped up in yourself that you can't see the hurt in other people and be
Mhm.
effective there. And
Right.
so my big thing is part of self-care is making sure that you're serving people so that you're giving your life meaning. And
Amazing.
part of that is serving your family and your children and your wife, but
Mhm.
also people outside of your so, and I know I slammed depression there a little bit, and I'm not taking anything away from anybody who says, the doctor says this, But my
Mm-hmm.
point is that I find most people, um, when it comes down to the topic of self-care, oftentimes they want more of the self-care because they're not solving a problem in their life,
Mm-hmm.
or they're not serving somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, and I have to say the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with everything Dustin is saying. So this is not to counter what he's saying. It's just to add a different
Mm-hmm.
level because that's what we do.
Right.
Is I think what he's saying is most people they accept the diagnosis and
Mm-hmm.
they succumb to it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just the end of the story. And
Right.
I think
Right.
what Dustin is saying, okay, well, this is what we need to deal with, right? I mean, I've had my share of things that I've had to deal with from my past and
Mm-hmm.
things I've talked about in other podcasts, but I didn't stay there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, the famous quote, if you're going through hell, don't stop, right?
speed
Mm-hmm.
Like,
up.
speed up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, TJ. They get through it faster, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
accept that there's a problem, right? Don't
Mm-hmm.
ignore that there's a problem. I don't think that that's healthy either. And I
Right.
think that some people, and myself included, used to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So acceptance is a really powerful place, but then it's like, what are we going to do about it? Right.
Right.
I mean,
Correct. It's the
Dustin
solving
and I,
of, right.
Dustin and I are both famous and we're tough on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we've gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
God, we've grown.
Mm-hmm.
Gotten is not a word. Sorry. Um,
I'm wearing off.
you are. We've grown,
Mm-hmm.
but if I complain about something three
Mm-hmm.
times, he'll be like, "All right, you're at your limit. You've said
Mm-hmm.
it three times. I'm
I
coming
got
in
it.
with a solution." And I'll
Uh-huh.
tell him the same thing. Like, "All right,
Mm-hmm.
like we've talked about this enough. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are we doing about it? How are
Mm-hmm.
we? Let's come together with a solution and
Amazing.
not just stay
Amazing.
here."
Okay. Okay.
Um, but you also sometimes like grief is very healthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when my Nana, who lived with me since I was 2 and lived with my parents till I was, 26, she was my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
When she passed, I grieved,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, even when our dog passed away, like we grieved.
Right.
We helped our daughter grieve. Um, and that's important. So I'm not saying just like run through it and just ignore it, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
also saying just don't stay there forever.
Right.
So I think that might add the other
Yeah.
side to what
So,
he was saying.
self-care, what I mean is like, I'm trust me, I'm pro self-care. Like, give me my sign. I'll go out there in front of Congress. Let's go. Like,
Right.
I'm down for it. I really am.
Uh-huh.
But my point though is like,
Mm-hmm.
we've been around, not too long ago, we were around some people where their self-care has gotten way out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
And your environment is a reflection of your internal thought process. And so
Right.
when your environment's getting out of hand, clutter's building up, dishes building up, mayhem is going on,
Right.
complacency setting in. It means that you're too wrapped up in the self-care. You have an abundance of that, and you're not engaged into the
Mm-hmm.
problems that are
Mm.
pushing on you. And problems are healthy. I had a client call me up, and nobody could solve this problem. And he was like, Dustin, nobody can. I'm blackballed from Google, And I was like, he's like, I'm blacklisted on Google. These big companies can't help me. They say they don't know what's going on. Can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, no promises.
Mm-hmm.
And found out that, unless he corrected a few things, he's never going to get unblacklisted. He didn't do anything wrong. He just did
He
something
trusted the wrong people.
yeah, he did something out of ignorance,
Mm-hmm.
and the people we trusted didn't take responsibility. And so it's like, I can't fix that problem.
Right.
But we were talking, and he was like, he was like, the last 3 years I've had the worst years of my business, and I don't know why. And we were sitting here talking, and um, once he kind of got his answer of like what was creating the problem of like why he was blacklisted from Google. He goes, and I said, why are you wanting to advertise? And he goes, well, I want more business, but I don't want more business where I can't handle it all. I don't want too much business.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, that's your problem.
Right.
Why you're having your poor years. And
Mm-hmm.
he said, why did you say that? And I
Mm-hmm.
said, I mean no offense when I say this, but I was like, I'd rather solve the problem of too much
Mm-hmm.
versus solving the problem of too little.
Mm-hmm.
And too little, you're always behind the 8 ball. It never measures up, it never adds up, you don't have enough, and
Mm-hmm.
it's stress and frustration.
Right.
But if you're solving a problem of too much, then now you're looking at completely different sets of problems and
Right.
solutions
Right.
that you can because if you've got too much in your life, then you have need for people to be in your life to help
Right.
serve, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's room for people to be in your life.
Right.
And that's what I tell people is, so what happens is they get in this mindset of self-care of like, I have to have this, I have to have this. And it's like, no, it means the problems in your life you're not rising to solve. And so they will stay your problems for as long as you accept them
Till you
as your
pass the
problems.
test.
Right.
And that's all a testimony is
Mhm.
a testimony is a test that you finally passed.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
keep taking the test until you passed it, and then you have a testimony. That's all
Right.
that is. But
Right.
people look at it as like I'm a failure and I can never be good enough or I never measure up. And it's like, no, just study and you keep retaking the test until
Right.
you're past the problem.
Right.
I'm a big believer that once a defeated enemy should stay a defeated enemy.
Hmm.
You shouldn't be going back down to the lower levels, the minor leagues, and
Right.
picking opponents. You should be making your opponents rise to your level.
Right.
And people aren't doing that with their problems. And they would rather forfeit self care because they say, I need this.
Hmm.
And with the gentleman that I invited to come over my house and we wrestled, he called me up at like 8 o'clock in the morning after his shift because he did third shift. And he goes, I have not felt sad or depressed in any way, shape, or form. Now, I didn't say stop taking your medication. I didn't say
Hmm.
stop going to see your doctor.
Right.
What was happening was he wasn't engaging in the struggles of his life
Right.
that the natural byproduct was he became sad. And so when he got engaged into the struggle, there is a healthiness about
Hmm.
wrestling with something that you don't have an immediate answer for. It's there's something that triggers.
It's the pursuit of
Correct.
happiness, right?
Hmm.
It creates certain thought patterns where you're pursuing something and you're
Hmm.
growing and changing to match whatever the conflict is. But if you're living a life where you're trying to remove conflict out of it, then you're also saying, I don't want growth
Right. Right.
because you're
Oh.
paid in direct proportion to the
Hmm.
problems that you solve.
Right.
So if you're not solving bigger problems, then
You don't.
that's going to
Yeah.
be the station of life that you're at. So
Last.
That's why they call him
Absolutely.
Reverend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh man. Yes, sir.
yeah, probably like 9 minutes.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
Our around 3:30 our kids may
Yeah.
start guest
And
starring
I
on the
was about to say,
podcast.
this is I'm looking at the clock and yeah, my friend, thank you so much. I think we have touched so much, and we can leave the rest, well, to the next, episode. I would love to chat with you again because there's so much we can
You
chat
come back?
about. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. We've done it.
absolutely. So,
People have
so,
asked for part twos. They
oh man,
have.
awesome. So,
Or I guest starred and then they were like, wait, your husband's doing podcasts now? Can he come
uh-huh,
now? And I'm like, sure.
amazing. Amazing. So please, folks, remember family is not an accident, it's a masterpiece. Keep building yours with intention. Intention is the part that a lot of times people are missing. So if you're inspired by Dustin and Annalise Van's story, uh, please let's share your own journey with us. Like write about your journey, and tag us hashtag Dad Puzzles Community. Until next time, please keep puzzling dads, and thank you for joining. Thank you again to Timothy and Tiffany for really, uh, giving us company. And I really look forward to having, more people and them as well join us again in the, when we record again. I think this is amazing. Um, so, did you have any other last words, guys?
I'll let you go first.
No, I appreciate you inviting us, and thank you for sharing your time with us. Hopefully, we were able to provide something for you, and
Amazing.
we'll look forward to another time.
Yeah,
Please,
and all
please.
I would add,
Yes,
I met Suleiman on LinkedIn, so my name, how it's spelled on the bottom there, as long as that shows up on the video, that's where you can
absolutely.
find me on
Hmm.
LinkedIn.
Yes.
You can also find me on nevermissamomentconsulting.com.
Hmm.
And if you go to the Let's Get Started page,
Hmm.
you can send a message there, mention Dad Puzzles, or if you're brave enough to try and spell Suleiman's name, you can do that.
Amazing, amazing.
We do
Yes.
have a first time offer for all of
Hmm.
our podcast listeners that reach out to us. Um, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you
Hmm.
can send me a DM. Just mention Dad Puzzles, so I know that's where you kind of heard of us from.
Amazing.
Or sometimes LinkedIn limits how many DMs you can send. So go to any of my posts. I'm not trying to get more engagement, but if
Hmm.
you send me a post there, hey, I heard you on Dad Puzzles, I'll shoot
Hmm.
you a DM myself,
Amazing.
and we
Amazing.
can go from there.
Amazing. Well, guys, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you again. And until next time, Take care. Awesome. Awesome. I will stop this here.